Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Make sure to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content. So today we're looking at Mini Box 32, Photons Galaxy, and we're going to be covering the rare cards. The first one is Photon Operative. This is a light attribute warrior type Exceeds monster. It's a rank 4 with 2100 attack and 1800 defense. It requires 2 level 4 monsters, and the effect is once per turn you can attach 1 Exceeds material from this card, and target 1 defense position monster on the field, change it to face up attack position, and if you do, it loses 600 attack. I have been waiting for this card to come into Duel Links, because even though it's not seen as that powerful, I remember when it initially came out, it was part of this rank 4 Exceeds toolbox, which everyone goes on about, who was around at that time. A series of generic rank 4 monsters, which you could easily summon and actually had effects which would help you accelerate your victory within the game. What was good about this is you do have quite a few decks that have defensive strategies to them, Subterras for example. Some of the Dark Magician stuff is also quite defensive, and you've got more support for various archetypes which make it really annoying to deal with those cards. Or even things like Blue Eyes White Dragon. Sometimes the traditional play they'll have is to either have their Ancient Stone of Legend or White Stone of Legend set face down and end their turn, and then you attack into it, do no damage, it goes to the graveyard, and either they get to search for a Blue Eyes White Dragon which goes to the hand, or they get to summon one straight to the field, in which case you've done their work for you. If you use this effect to flip that monster over, their attack would become 0, do a lot of damage, and you could potentially OTK them within that turn. That's one way of punishing those styles of players, although it does not prevent trigger effects, so if they've got a flip effect, you are susceptible to taking that on the chin. Photon Alexandra Queen is a light attribute warrior type Exceeds monster. It's a rank 4 with 2400 attack and 1200 defense. This one requires 2 level 4 Butterfly monsters, and you can detach 1 Exceeds material from this card, return all monsters on the field to the hand, then inflict 300 damage to each player for each card returned to their hand. This is a card used by Dextra within Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal, and she was friends with Kite and was protected by Kite at some point during their training. It's one of these Photon Exceeds monsters that isn't typically part of the generic Photon archetype, as it's more linked to the Butterfly archetype. As you can see, its requirement, the Exceeds materials. The good thing about this card is it resets the field, so if your opponent has some powerful cards and they can't do anything about those from those cards getting returned, then it punishes them, and it also puts you in a point where you're doing them some burn damage, but it also does the same amount of damage to you. Remember, with the whole nerfing of the burn effects, it does half the amount of damage, so it's only 150 damage for each monster, so at most, if you're looking at a full field, you're looking at 450 points of damage each. It's not advisable to run this card. Out of all the Exceeds monsters, you've got plenty of those that support your archetypes or your decks much better than this card. Paladin of Photon Dragon is a light attribute warrior type ritual monster. It's a level 4 with 1900 attack and 800 defense. You can ritual summon this card with Luminize Dragon Ritual. You contribute this card, special summon 1 Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon from your hand or deck. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, draw 1 card. So this is part of the whole series of monsters that have Paladin for a name. They're all ritual monsters. Some of them, one does for the Paladin of White Dragon is for Blue Eyes White Dragon. You've got one for Red Eyes Black Dragon. You've got, I think, one for the Odd Eyes archetype as well, and then you've also got one for the Galaxy Eyes archetype. The difference between many of those is Paladin of White Dragon, that being, I think, the oldest incarnation of it, the original one. It doesn't really have an effect outside of tribute it and summon a Blue Eyes from your deck. This has an additional effect. Yes, you can get rid of this to bring out your Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, but you also have the ability to continually draw cards as long as you're able to destroy your opponent's monster and send it to the graveyard, this card's battle phase effect. That's quite decent. You can keep that up for a certain amount of time just to add the pressure or to at least increase your resources. And you know, if you're ever in a situation where you think it's no longer viable, you can trade it off for your Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. Ghost Trick Jingxi is a dark attribute zombie type level 3 with 400 attack and 1800 defense. cannot be normal summoned unless you control a Ghost Trick monster. Once per turn, you can change this card to face down defense position. When this card is flipped face up, you can add from your deck to your hand one Ghost Trick monster whose level is less than or equal to the number of Ghost Trick monsters you control. You can only use this effect for Ghost Trick Jiangshi once per turn. So the initial effect to be able to put it into face down defense position means that you're not potentially as threatened as you could be if it, just had to flip over and then just stay in attack mode. You've got that level of protection. It also lets you search for cards whose level are less than or equal to the Ghost Tricks you have, so potentially you can get up to a level 3 monster out, but it is very slow and slow burning. The Ghost Tricks do work that way. There's a couple of them that prevent your opponent from attacking, or are quite annoying because they'll get rid of your opponent's key cards, to the point where actually you can't even run over some of these monsters. That's how the archetype likes to work. Dodo Witch is a Earth Attribute Warrior type level 4 with 1200 attack and 1600 defense. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon one Dodo monster from your hand in attack position or face down defense position, except Dodo Witch. The idea of this is you just get another monster out of the same archetype to go into another one of your rank 4 plays. It's an okay effect, and there are more generic monsters out there, so for example Goblinberg is the best example for something that isn't archetypal related. If you're running a Dodo deck, then that's fine. If not, I would suggest forgetting this card, it's not that useful. So the next card is Dodo Swordsman. This is an Earth Attribute Warrior type level 8 with 0 attack and 3000 defense. While this flip summon card is face up on the field, it gains 3500 attack. When this card is flipped face up, you can target up to 2 face up monsters on the field and destroy them. Okay, so forget what I was saying about Dodo Witch. That is an amazing effect if you're bringing out this guy. Remember, it can bring out this Dodo in face down defense position, so you have the ability to flip it up to give it the stat line up for the 3500 attack. That type of effect you don't really see in too many boss monsters, and typically for an archetype that's mostly emphasised on supporting Xyz summoning, to have this type of boss monster is quite unusual. To have this stat lineup is quite unusual as well, because if you can deal with your opponent's cards, you're able to just go instantly into the battle phase. The trigger effect is also quite nice, because what it means is your opponent, even if they don't attack into it, you can just flip this card face up anyway, and you can do the same thing, get rid of their face up monsters. Unless they've got forms of protection, they're not going to be able to stop this card. Blue Mountain Butterspy is a Dark Attribute Warrior type level 4 with 0 attack and 1700 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set. When you normal summon a Warrior type monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. This card cannot be used as a synchro material monster. Again, this is meant to be part of the Butterspy archetype, but they tend to be Warrior type anyway, so it can either work within its own archetype, or it can work alongside generic Warrior type monsters anyway. The great thing about this card is it's essentially made for Xyz summoning, as it says here specifically. You cannot use it for synchro material, so it focuses the direction of your deck that much more. Galaxy Storm is a quick play spell card with the effect target one face up Xyz monster on the field, has no Xyz material, destroy that target. What's good about this card is it just generically gets rid of one of the Xyz monsters. The downside is it does have to have used all its Xyz materials up, so it's very much like attacking into a Utopia with no materials, because it just self-destructs on that effect. The bad side is it does require quite a lot of patience to use it, and there are so many cards out there with better effects that just get rid of those Xyz materials, regardless of whether they have Xyz materials on them. Photon Trident is a quick play spell card with the effect target one face up photon monster you control. Until the end phase, it gains 700 attack, and if it attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. When it inflicts battle damage to your opponent's turn, you can target one spell or trap card on the field and destroy that target. This is a quick play spell card, so it can react during either turn. It can be if your opponent tries to attack one of your photon monsters, or you can use it as part of your turn when you go into the battle phase. It's brilliant because not only does it give a 700 point boost, it works alongside Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, because that's technically a Photon card as well as a Galaxy Eyes card. So the piercing damage means you're guaranteed to do the damage as well if they've got a defensive deck as well. And they get punished if they go into this attack into your monster if they take damage, as they lose one of their spell or traps as well. So that all adds up to a lot of advantage in a very short amount of time. Xyz Doubleback is a quick play spell card with the effect during the turn a face-up Xyz monster you control was destroyed. If you control no monsters, target one Xyz monster in your graveyard that was destroyed this turn and one monster in your graveyard with attack less than or equal to that Xyz monster's. Special summon those targets, but they are destroyed during the end phase. The purpose of this effect is that you can just bring back your Xyz monster to protect your life points if your opponent is trying to go all in. Alternatively, if it does have the ability to use its effect with it as a quick effect, so during your opponent's turn, can use its effect to disrupt your opponent, or even if you want to use it on your turn, you can use that as well. But generally I wouldn't run this card, it's quite specific, and it only happens under meeting certain conditions, which are not going to meet that often within a duel. Luminize is a normal trap card with the effect when an opponent's monster declares an attack, target the attacking monster, negate the attack, and one face-up light monster you control gains attack equal to that target's attack until your next end phase. This is really good because it doesn't require your opponent's monster to be a light attribute, it only requires yours. So you can run so many different light attribute decks. Light Swarms are an example, you've got Galaxy Eyes, you've got Photons, and there is so much support for light attributes in general. You've got fairy-based decks, counter-based decks, you've got spellcasters, just so many options that you can go for. It shuts down your opponent's attack, and it punishes them because you're then able to steal that monster's attack until the end of your next turn. So essentially you keep those attack stat. It's not a case of it being just until the end of that turn. It gives you an ability to use that attack boost as well. Bouncer Guard is a normal trap card with the effect target one face-up bouncer monster you control. This turn it cannot be targeted by other card effects or be destroyed by battle. This turn, if an opponent's monster attacks, it must target that monster for an attack if it is still on the field. This was used in a tag team duel between Dextra and Nistro, where Nistro was concerned about protecting Dextra as they were the enforcers within the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal, within the tournament that they were running, with the support of Mr. Heartland against Yuma, and Yuma tried to defeat Dextra. Nistro just wanted to protect her, so forcing the attack against his own bouncer monster. It's a redirecting effect, which is okay because it does let your bouncer monster essentially stay alive, but you do take the damage if your opponent's monster happens to be stronger than it. That might not make too much difference if you're able to then use it for an Xyz summon maybe during your next turn. And the final rare card is Butterfly Yoke. This is a normal trap card with the effect when an opponent's monster declares an attack, target the attacking monster, change that target to defense position, and if you do, equip this card to that monster. Once per turn during either player's main phase or battle phase, you can change the equipped monster's battle position. So with the Butterfly archetype, their focus is on changing battle position, often from defense to attack, so Photon the operative, that reduces the attack of your opponent's monster. You also have Butterfly Swallowtail, who has a similar kind of effect, which reduces your opponent's monster's attack if you manage to do some damage into one of your opponent's other monsters. So you can continue to reduce your opponent's monsters to shreds. It's really good if you're trying to counter certain basic decks. If their boss monsters have a really strong attack or defense stat and are really weak on the opposite stat, you can always alternate the stat lineup so you then run over those cards.